The Washington Commanders are sitting on something massive right now, and almost nobody outside that building wants to say it out loud. One minute, this team looks like they're about to crash out of the playoff picture forever. The next, they're holding the keys to flip the entire NFC on its head. Jaden Daniels didn't just survive last season. He showed flashes that make you wonder what happens when everything finally clicks around him. Fans felt that hope 2 years ago. Tasted it when they were one win from the Super Bowl, then watched it slip away in a brutal 5-win collapse. But here's the part that keeps people up at night. This isn't a rebuild. This is a team with real tools, real money, and a quarterback who already proved he can carry the load when the lights are brightest. They've got Adam Peters calling the shots in the front office and Dan Quinn running the sideline, two guys who know exactly what a championship window looks like. Huge cap space sitting there waiting to be spent, a high first-round pick ready to drop into their lap, and a core of veterans who still have gas left in the tank. Jaden Daniels isn't some project anymore. He's the proven star who made defenses look silly, even when half the offense was banged up. The defense took its lumps last year, sure, but Quinn grabbed play-calling duties late in the season and brought in Dante Jones from that nasty Minnesota scheme to shake things up. That mix of fresh ideas and old-school toughness is starting to feel dangerous. The question isn't whether they can get back to 12 wins. The question is how high this ceiling really goes if they stop tripping over their own feet. But the real story isn't the past collapse or the shiny new pieces. It's what happens when you finally give Jaden Daniels an offense that doesn't force him to play hero ball every snap. The scheme is shifting, the line is getting stronger, and the weapons room is about to look a lot different. If they nail these next moves, the rest of the NFC starts circling this team on the schedule with real worry instead of writing them off. So let's get into it, because the way they're redesigning this attack might be the biggest quiet change nobody saw coming. But before we jump into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Commanders and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. And the Washington Commanders are quietly rewriting how this whole attack works, and the shift feels bigger than most people realize. They spent last year living in Cliff Kingsbury's RPO world, where Jaden Daniels had to read, decide, and often run for his life on almost every play. It created big moments, sure, but it also piled up punishment on a young quarterback who was already taking too many shots. Now David Blau steps in as the new voice behind the offense. Bringing a more traditional pro-style blueprint that makes everything look the same at the snap, leans hard on play action to freeze linebackers, and gets the ball out fast so clean hits become rare. That single change alone could add years to Jaden Daniels' career while turning explosive plays into something that happens by design instead of desperation. Up front, the pieces are already falling into place in a way that surprises even some insiders. So Laramie Tunsil locks down the blind side like a true elite left tackle. Sam Cosmi has turned into a nasty, reliable guard who fights through every rep, and Tyler Biadasz gives them steady snap-to-snap work at center. Then there's Josh Connerly, the young tackle with the length and feet to grow into a long-term answer if the coaching staff gives him the right runway. This group isn't perfect yet, but it's solid enough that one smart move at the other guard spot could push the entire line from good to scary. A healthy Elijah Vera Tucker would be the dream swing signing to cement the middle, but if the risk feels too high, veterans like Isaac Samalo, Joel Bitonio, Kevin Zeitler, or Wyatt Teller bring proven toughness and leadership without needing to be the flashiest names in the room. When that wall holds up, everything downstream changes. Jaden Daniels stops scrambling for his life and starts picking apart coverages from a clean pocket. Defenses can't pin their ears back and rush 4 every snap because the run game suddenly looks real again. The entire rhythm of the offense becomes smoother, more controlled, and way more dangerous on third downs. But none of that matters unless the playmakers behind the line match the new vision. And that's where the pressure really starts to build on who they bring in to catch passes and create after the catch. The next layer of this rebuild is all about turning good weapons into a group that makes coordinators lose sleep. The Washington Commanders have a chance to turn their passing game from solid into something that truly scares people. And it all starts with giving Jaden Daniels targets he can trust every single time he drops back. Terry McLaurin remains the absolute foundation. The guy who runs perfect routes and wins contested catches when the defense knows exactly where the ball is going. He's the heartbeat that keeps drives alive on 3rd and long. Then you have Deebo Samuel, who becomes deadly the moment he stops being forced into a strict number 1 role. Motion him across the formation, line him up in the slot, hand him the ball out of the backfield. Whatever it takes to make linebackers and safeties hesitate. And that kind of unpredictability forces defenses to play honest, and honest defenses get picked apart. The depth behind those two has shown flashes, but flashes aren't enough when you're chasing a title. Luke McCaffrey, Noah Brown, and Jalen Lane bring real effort and occasional big plays. Yet they shine brightest when asked to win specific matchups instead of carrying the load week after week. That's exactly why adding another reliable option feels non-negotiable. Whether they lock Deebo Samuel back in on a deal that makes sense for both sides or grab a fresh face from this loaded receiver class, the goal stays the same. Create 3 legitimate threats on every snap. Picture a young speedster or a shifty separator in the mold of Wan'Dale Robinson stretching the field horizontally, while Terry McLaurin works vertically and Deebo Samuel attacks underneath. Defenses can't sit back and wait anymore. They have to pick their poison. When that room clicks, the entire offense breathes different. Jaden Daniels gets quicker reads, fewer forced scrambles, and the freedom to attack instead of survive. Coordinators stop dialing up exotic pressures because one wrong call turns into a chunk play or worse. But weapons alone don't make an attack complete. The real difference maker comes when the tight ends and running backs start stressing the same defenses in ways that open everything else up. That's the layer that's been missing. And fixing it could quietly push this group from good to borderline unstoppable. The Washington Commanders can quietly flip their entire identity if they get the backfield and tight end spots right. Because those positions unlock doors the wide receivers alone can't touch. Chris Rodriguez brings legitimate power between the tackles, the kind that wears down front sevens and sets up play action later in games. Jackery Krosky-Merritt adds burst and balance, incapable of catching passes out of the backfield or hitting the edge when the defense overcommits inside. Pair either of them with a savvy veteran who won't break the bank, someone like Kenny Gainwell, Najee Harris, or J.K. Dobbins, and suddenly the run game stops being predictable. Defenses can't load the box every snap without paying a price, and that hesitation creates windows everywhere else. At tight end, Zach Ertz still brings football IQ that few can match, reading coverages pre-snap and finding soft spots against zone looks. But one reliable seam runner changes the math completely. A player who can split safeties and stretch the middle forces linebackers to drop deeper, which opens underneath routes for Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. Names like Isaiah Likely fit that profile perfectly right now with speed to burn and hands that stick. While a bigger swing like Kyle Pitts would give Jaden Daniels a walking mismatch nightmare anytime the clock is ticking. Either direction works as long as the addition creates vertical stress that the current room lacks. When those pieces lock in, the offense stops relying on perfect execution from the wideouts to move chains. The attack becomes layered, unpredictable, and exhausting to defend because every formation looks capable of running, passing, or hitting a wheel route in the flat. Jaden Daniels gets easier throws, better protection from play action, and the chance to operate in rhythm instead of bailout mode. That level of balance is what separates good teams from ones that make deep playoff runs. But none of it holds up without a defense that can actually stop people when it counts. And that's where last year's cracks became impossible to ignore. The rebuild on that side of the ball starts inside and works its way out. The Washington Commanders' defense took more punishment than anyone wants to remember last season, but the building blocks inside the trenches are stronger than the record suggests. Darren Payne keeps showing up as a force who demands double teams just to breathe, collapsing pockets and clogging run lanes with consistent power that rarely fades. Johnny Newton is still growing into the role, learning how to win with technique instead of pure size. While Javon Kinlaw brings reliable snap-to-snap work as a rotational piece who can spell the starters without a drop in intensity. That interior core gives Dan Quinn something real to build around, a foundation that can eat blocks and create negative plays if the pieces around them start finishing what they start. On the edge, the group has talent that's been asked to do too much for too long. Dorrance Armstrong fights hard every rep and sets the tone with effort that rubs off. It's while Frankie Louvu brings versatility and instincts that make him valuable in pursuit or coverage drops. Neither has been the outright closer yet, but that's the point. They thrive when they're complementary pieces hunting in a rotation instead of carrying the pass rush solo. Add one true finisher who can bend the corner or bull rush tackles into the quarterback, and the entire front seven starts looking like the aggressive units Quinn has always built. Pressure becomes real, not occasional. And offenses can't sit back and pick apart the secondary without consequence. When that front starts winning early downs and generating sacks on obvious passing situations, everything else on defense flows easier. Linebackers don't have to cover so much ground. Safeties can play downhill instead of babysitting deep. And young corners get cleaner looks because quarterbacks are hurried. Dan Quinn knows this formula better than most. And bringing in Dante Jones signals they're done patching and ready to reload properly. The interior and edge are the starting point, but the real test comes in the secondary where communication broke down at the worst possible times. Fixing that layer could turn a shaky unit into one that actually matches the offense's potential. The Washington Commanders secondary became the silent killer of last season's hopes. Where small breakdowns snowballed into drives that never ended and games that slipped away in the fourth quarter. Marshawn Lattimore arrived with a track record of shutting down top receivers, but constant shuffling around him and nagging injuries turned strong individual play into group confusion. Safeties like Quan Martin flashed ball skills in flashes, yet missed assignments and poor eye discipline showed up on critical third downs far too often. Those moments weren't about lack of talent. They were about trust, alignment, and the kind of instinctive communication that only comes when players spend real time together in the same system. The youth movement back there gives real reason for optimism if the coaching staff puts them in positions to succeed. Mike Sainristil has already proven he can handle physicality and route savvy in the slot, turning short areas into no-catch zones when he's locked in. Trey Amos brings length and ball tracking ability that fits the aggressive style Dan Quinn wants to unleash. The kind where corners press at the line and force quarterbacks to look elsewhere quickly. Neither is a finished product, but that's the beauty. They're building blocks with traits that match the scheme, not square pegs jammed into round holes. Surround them with better help up front and clearer rules on the back end, and those instincts start turning into takeaways instead of explosives. A reset secondary changes the math for the whole defense. Quarterbacks hesitate when they see press coverage and clean pockets vanish. Running backs face stacked boxes because safeties can crash downhill without fear of getting burned deep. The entire unit starts playing with the same edge Dan Quinn demands: fast, physical, and fearless. But turning potential into production means addressing the gaps that past drafts left wide open. The ones that force so many expensive trades just to stay competitive. The front office can't keep chasing fixes forever. This is the window to finally grow answers from within. The Washington Commanders are finally breaking free from a cycle that haunted them for years, where high picks promised long-term answers but delivered mostly questions instead. Talents like Chase Young, Jamin Davis, Jahan Dotson, and Emmanuel Forbes came in with sky-high expectations, each carrying the weight of being franchise cornerstones at edge, linebacker, receiver, and corner. They showed real ability in spots, moments that made you believe the future was bright, yet none locked down a permanent role that let the team stop searching for solutions at those positions. That pattern forced the organization into constant catch-up mode, burning premium assets just to stay afloat instead of building sustainably. The new regime under Josh Harris, Adam Peters, and Dan Quinn inherited that reality and chose action over excuses. They went out and acquired proven players who could contribute right away. Marshawn Lattimore to stabilize the outside corner spot, Deebo Samuel to inject versatility into the passing game, and Laramie Tunsil to anchor the offensive line with elite protection. Those moves bought time and wins, no doubt, but they also came with costs. Draft capital traded away, cap hits that limit flexibility, and fewer cheap young contracts growing on the roster. Every trade was necessary at the time. The bigger lesson is that you can't keep paying tomorrow's price for today's fixes forever. Now the front office has the chance to flip the script completely. Use the resources they still control to grow talent from within again. To draft players who stick instead of ones who force another round of expensive replacements. Adam Peters gets it, Dan Quinn lives it. This offseason isn't about one more splash to paper over old holes. It's about planting seeds that become the core for multiple deep runs. The defense especially needs that shift, because patching it with veterans only lasts so long before the same weaknesses resurface. The blueprint for real contention starts with ruthless honesty about what this roster still truly lacks, and the willingness to use every tool available to fill those gaps for good. And the Washington Commanders hold more real leverage this offseason than they've had in a long time. And the way they spend it will either cement Jaden Daniels' prime or let it fade into another closed but no cigar story. Massive cap room gives them room to chase impact free agents without panic, and that top-tier first-round pick lands like a loaded weapon they can aim at whatever hurts most. Son, the smart path looks straightforward on paper. Lock down offensive stability first so Jaden Daniels operates from advantage instead of survival. Then flood the defense with fresh, hungry youth who grow into shutdown roles over the next few seasons. One strong guard signing turns the line from reliable to dominant. A pass-catching tight end who threatens the seam, opens lanes nobody could exploit before. Decide on Deebo Samuel's future or draft a new complement for Terry McLaurin. And the attack suddenly has balance that lasts all 4 quarters. On the defensive side, the draft becomes the real game changer. Target an edge who finishes rushes with violence, a corner who matches up physically against elite receivers, and a safety who communicates like a quarterback back there. Those picks don't just plug holes. They create competition that pushes everyone harder and builds depth that survives injuries. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn aren't rebuilding from scratch. They're upgrading a roster that already has Jaden Daniels under center, Terry McLaurin stretching the field, and enough veterans to mentor the next wave. Get cute with flashy but mismatched additions and the window stays cracked open. Stay disciplined, honest about the weak links, and they walk into next season looking like a complete threat instead of a team still figuring itself out. The rest of the NFC feels that shift whether they admit it or not. Teams that used to pencil this matchup as a comfortable win now have to game plan for a quarterback who can beat you with his arm, his legs, or his mind. Rivals start marking the Commanders' date on the calendar with extra film sessions and real concern. If the front office nails these decisions, Jaden Daniels doesn't just carry a franchise. He anchors one that contends year after year. One bright season becomes the launchpad for something much bigger. The pieces are lined up. And the stakes couldn't be clearer. When training camp opens and that rebuilt roster takes the field, the league will either breathe easy or feel that unmistakable jolt that says, Washington is no longer coming. They're already here.